Mom demanded I give up my dream job for my sister, so I left a letter and disappeared. The text message from Mom blazed across my phone screen at exactly 3:17 a.m. Emergency. Come home now. Your sister needs you more than ever. I stared at those words until they burned into my vision, my hands trembling with that familiar cocktail of fury and exhausted resignation. My name is Melissa, and I'm 29 years old. For the past decade, I've been the family's designated fixer, the responsible daughter, the one who drops everything when crisis calls. Tonight was supposed to mark the end of all that. Just 6 hours earlier, I'd been celebrating the biggest achievement of my career, landing the creative director position at Sterling & Associates, one of Seattle's most prestigious marketing agencies. The starting salary was $95,000 plus equity. More money than I'd ever dreamed of making. Don't you dare answer that, my best friend Maya warned, sliding another glass of wine across the table. We were the last customers in the upscale restaurant where my colleagues had thrown me a celebration dinner. You know exactly what this is about. I did know. My 26-year-old sister Sophia had been struggling again. Last month it was because she couldn't choose between 2 luxury apartments in downtown Portland, both paid for by Dad's real estate money. The month before that, she'd had a breakdown because her influencer boyfriend had dumped her for not getting enough engagement on their couple's content. And every single time, Mom expected me to drop my life and rush to Sophia's rescue. She's probably having another existential crisis about her content creation career, I said, making air quotes. Remember when I had to miss my promotion interview because she needed emotional support after losing 50 Instagram followers? Maya's expression darkened. That interview that would have changed your entire trajectory. The one that took you 2 more years to get another shot at. My phone buzzed again. Then again. Then it started ringing. Answer it, Maya said quietly. But put it on speaker. I want to hear this. I accepted the call. Hi, Mom. Melissa? Thank God. Mom's voice was strained dramatic. Where have you been? I've been calling for hours. It's 3 a.m., Mom. I was having dinner with colleagues. Well, you need to get home immediately. Sophia's having a complete breakdown. Her YouTube channel got demonetized, and she's talking about ending it all. My blood ran cold. What do you mean ending it all? She locked herself in her room and won't come out. She says she can't live without her online career. Melissa? I'm scared. Maya grabbed my wrist, her eyes wide. This wasn't the usual Sophia drama. This sounded serious. Mom, have you called anyone, a counselor? The crisis hotline. We need you, Melissa. She only listens to you. You're the only one who can talk sense into her. I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar trap closing around me. Mom, I just accepted a position in Seattle. I'm supposed to start in 2 weeks. I can't just... You're choosing a job over your sister's life. Mom's voice turned sharp. What kind of person does that make you? The guilt hit like a physical slap. Maya was shaking her head frantically, mouthing, "Don't do it. There are mental health professionals who can help her better than I can. She doesn't trust therapists. She trusts you. You've always been her rock, Melissa. You can't abandon her now." I felt the walls of my carefully constructed new life beginning to crumble. What exactly are you asking me to do? Come home. Help her rebuild her brand. You're brilliant at marketing. You could help her get back on track. And while you're here, you could look for opportunities locally. Portland has plenty of marketing firms. Maya was now writing furiously on a napkin, "Do not cave. This is manipulation. Mom, this job in Seattle is everything I've worked for. It's my dream position. Dreams change, honey. Family is forever. Besides, Sophia needs you more than some company needs another employee." The familiar script. The same guilt tactics that had worked for years. But something felt different this time. Maybe it was the wine, or maybe it was finally reaching my breaking point. "Let me think about it," I said carefully. "I'll call you back in the morning. Melissa, she's in crisis now. Every minute you delay could be..." I hung up. Maya leaned forward. "Tell me you're not going back there." I stared at my phone as it immediately started ringing again. Mom. Then a text from Sophia. "Mel, I can't do this anymore. Everything's falling apart. I need my big sister." For 29 years, I'd been trained to respond to these emergency calls, to drop everything and rush to Sophia's side, to sacrifice my own opportunities for her latest crisis. But tonight something had shifted. Maybe it was seeing my colleagues' faces when I announced my new job, the respect, the genuine excitement for my success. Maybe it was remembering all the times I'd put my life on hold for Sophia's drama, only to watch her bounce back while I remained stuck. "I'm not going back," I said quietly. "Not this time." Maya's face broke into a fierce smile. "Thank fucking God." I pulled out my laptop. "I'm going to do something I should have done years ago." "What's that?" "I'm going to disappear. Let them handle their own crisis for once." As I opened a new document, my phone continued buzzing with increasingly frantic messages. But for the first time in my adult life, I didn't answer. Instead, I began typing the letter that would change everything. By 4:30 a.m., I had written and rewritten the letter 7 times. Maya had fallen asleep on my couch, but I was wired with adrenaline and righteous anger. 29 years of suppressed resentment had found their voice. The final version was 3 pages of brutal honesty. I read it aloud to Maya's sleeping form, testing how the words sounded. "Mom, Dad, and Sophia. By the time you read this, I'll be on a plane to Seattle. I know this isn't how you wanted things to go, but I refuse to set myself on fire to keep others warm anymore. Mom, you've always preached that family comes first, but you never meant the whole family, just Sophia. When I was working 3 jobs in college to pay for my education, you called me selfish for not having time to help her with homework. She could have done herself. When I got my first promotion, you dismissed it, because Sophia was having boy troubles that apparently required my immediate intervention. Dad, your silence has been just as damaging as Mom's demands. You've watched me sacrifice my dreams repeatedly for Sophia's whims, and you've never once stood up for me. Your passive acceptance made you complicit in this dysfunction. And Sophia, I love you, but you're 26 years old. Your inability to handle normal adult challenges isn't cute anymore. It's exhausting. Every crisis isn't a genuine emergency, requiring everyone else to halt their lives. I'm not doing this to hurt anyone. I'm doing this because for the first time in my life, I'm choosing myself. I've accepted the position in Seattle. I've signed a lease. I'm starting fresh. Don't try to guilt me into coming back with threats or ultimatums. I've been financially independent since 18. Nothing changes except that I'll finally be free to build my own life. If you want a relationship with me going forward, it needs to be on equal terms. No more expectations that I'll sacrifice my opportunities for Sophia's latest drama. No more manipulation disguised as family loyalty. I hope someday you'll understand why I had to leave to become who I'm meant to be. Maya stirred as I finished reading. Holy shit, Melissa. That's intense. Too much. It's perfect, it's honest, it's long overdue. I printed the letter on my home printer, my hands still shaking slightly. This was really happening. I was really doing this. My phone had 23 missed calls and 47 text messages. I turned it off without reading them. I need to pack, I said. My flight leaves in 4 hours. Flight? Maya sat up, suddenly alert. When did you book a flight? While you were sleeping. One-way ticket to Seattle. I figured if I'm burning bridges, I might as well do it spectacularly. Maya helped me pack 2 suitcases with essentials. Everything else would be shipped later, if I decided I wanted it. This felt like more than moving cities. It felt like shedding a skin I'd outgrown years ago. What about your apartment here? Maya asked. I'll handle the lease remotely. I'm done being within driving distance of their emergencies. At 5:45 a.m., Maya drove me across town to my parents' house in the upscale West Side neighborhood where I'd grown up. The house looked peaceful in the pre-dawn darkness, almost mockingly so. Dad's pristine BMW sat in the driveway next to Mom's white Mercedes. Sophia's red convertible, a graduation gift that cost more than most people's annual salary, occupied the third space. I slipped out of Maya's car with the letter in my hand. The spare key was still hidden under the ceramic frog by the front door. Some things never changed. The house felt like a museum of my childhood. Family photos lined the hallway, most featuring Sophia's achievements. Her high school graduation, her first YouTube milestone plaque, her Influencer of the Year award from some minor blog. There were a few photos of me scattered among them, my college graduation, my first job, my recent promotion. But they were smaller, less prominently displayed. Even in our family photos, I was the supporting character to Sophia's main storyline. I placed the letter on the kitchen counter where Mom would find it during her morning coffee ritual. My hand lingered on the envelope for a moment before I forced myself to turn away. Walking back to Maya's car, I felt simultaneously lighter and heavier. Lighter because I was finally freeing myself from a toxic dynamic. Heavier because I was potentially destroying the only family I'd ever known. "Any regrets?" Maya asked as we drove toward the airport. I checked my phone one last time before turning it off completely. 17 new missed calls. A voicemail from Dad asking me to call back urgently. "None," I said and meant it. At the airport, everything moved in a surreal blur. Security, coffee, waiting at the gate. It wasn't until I was buckled into my seat that the full magnitude of what I'd done hit me. "First time visiting Seattle?" asked the businessman in the seat next to me. "No," I replied, managing a small smile. "First time moving there permanently." As the plane lifted off, I watched Portland disappear beneath the clouds. Somewhere down there, my family was probably just discovering my letter. Mom would be furious first, then hurt, then would immediately shift into crisis management mode. Dad would read it silently, perhaps feeling a flicker of guilt, but ultimately deferring to Mom's reaction. And Sophia, I pictured her perfectly contoured face crumpling as she realized her emotional support system had vanished overnight. Part of me ached for her, but a stronger part felt an overwhelming sense of relief. I was finally steering my own ship. Whatever storm I'd just unleashed, at least I was free. Seattle embraced me like I'd always belonged there. My tiny studio apartment in Capitol Hill was a far cry from the spacious bedroom I'd had at my parents' house. But every square inch was mine, earned with my own money, decorated to my own taste. Sterling and Associates turned out to be everything I'd hoped for and more. My boss, Johnny Rodriguez, was brilliant and supportive. My team was creative and collaborative. For the first time in my professional life, I felt truly challenged and valued. "Melissa, you've got natural instincts for this," Johnny told me after my first major client presentation. That fresh perspective is exactly what we needed. But the victory was bittersweet. My phone, which I'd finally turned back on after a week of blissful silence, held 89 missed calls, 156 text messages, and 23 voicemails. I'd been checking them sporadically, like picking at a wound. The progression was predictable. Day 1. "Melissa, what were you thinking? Call me immediately." Mom Day 3. "Your sister is devastated. How could you be so cruel?" Mom Day 5. "I never thought you could be this selfish." Dad Day 7. "Fine. If you want to throw away your family for some job, that's your choice." Mom Day 10. "Mel, please, I'm sorry if I was too needy. I'm getting help. Can we talk?" Sophia. That last message had almost broken my resolve. Almost. But then Maya called with an update that changed everything. "I have tea," she announced without preamble. "And you're going to want to sit down for this." I was in my office reviewing campaign materials for our newest client, a sustainable fashion startup run by 2 brilliant women entrepreneurs. "Spill," I said, closing my laptop. "Your parents hired a private investigator to find you. They what? Apparently, they were convinced you'd had some kind of mental breakdown. They were telling everyone you'd been kidnapped, or were in an abusive relationship that made you cut contact." I laughed, but it came out sharper than intended. Of course they were. God forbid they admit I might have left by choice. It gets better. The PI they hired. He's the ex-husband of Sophia's therapist. Wait, Sophia's seeing a therapist. Since when? Since her fake suicide scare didn't bring you running home. Turns out it wasn't actually a mental health crisis. She was just pissed that YouTube demonetized her channel for promoting those sketchy diet pills. The room seemed to tilt. "What do you mean fake suicide scare?" Maya's voice turned serious. "Melissa, I did some digging. That night your mom called Sophia was at a party. I have Instagram stories from her friends showing her doing shots at 2 a.m. She wasn't locked in her room having a breakdown. She was out getting wasted and posting about it." My hands clenched around the phone. So the crisis that was supposed to make me give up my dream job was completely fabricated. Gets worse. "I talked to your neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. She said your parents were outside loading suitcases into their car the morning after you left. They went to Cabo for a week. They went on vacation while supposedly worried sick about their suicidal daughter and missing eldest child. Yep. And Sophia went with them, posted beach selfies the whole time. I stared out my office window at the Seattle skyline, processing this information. The emergency that was supposed to derail my entire future had been theater, manipulation designed to maintain control. There's more, Maya continued. The PI your parents hired, he found your address 2 weeks ago. How do you know that? Because he came to my apartment asking questions. Real sleazy guy. Kept asking about your mental state and whether you were under someone's influence. A chill ran down my spine. Maya, I need you to be careful. If they're hiring investigators. Already handled. I told him you were thriving and that if he contacted me again, I'd file a harassment complaint. But Melissa, you should know. They're not planning to give up. That evening, I made a decision that would prove to be prophetic. I hired my own attorney. Jennifer Walsh was a family law specialist who came highly recommended. Her office in downtown Seattle was warm but professional, and she listened to my story without judgment. What you're describing sounds like a pattern of emotional abuse and manipulation, she said when I finished. The private investigator is concerning, but not illegal, if he's not trespassing or harassing you directly. What can I do? Document everything, save all voicemails, texts, emails. If they escalate to showing up at your workplace or home, we can pursue restraining orders. It feels so extreme. Melissa, from what you've described, your family has spent years conditioning you to believe their needs supersede your basic right to live your own life. That's not normal. That's not healthy. And their reaction to your boundary settings suggests they have no intention of respecting your autonomy. I left Jennifer's office with a folder full of legal documents and a growing sense that this story was far from over. That night, I got a call from an unknown Seattle number. Melissa, this is Dr. Sarah Kim. I'm a therapist here in Seattle, and I believe your sister Sophia is one of my patients. My blood ran cold. How did you get my number? That's complicated. Can we meet? There are some things you need to know about your family's recent activities, things that could affect your safety. Dr. Sarah Kim's office was in a quiet building near Green Lake. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with kind eyes and an air of professional competence that immediately put me at ease. I want to be upfront, she began. I'm violating several ethical boundaries by contacting you, but I believe your family's behavior has escalated to the point where you may be in danger. Danger from my family. Dr. Kim pulled out a thick folder. Sophia has been my patient for 3 weeks. She was referred by her primary care physician after what she called a family emergency. But the story she told me didn't match the story I was getting from other sources. She opened the folder and spread out several documents. Your sister came to me claiming severe depression and abandonment trauma after you suddenly disappeared. She said you'd had a psychotic break and were being held against your will by an abusive boyfriend in Seattle. That's completely insane. I thought so too, especially when she asked me to write a letter to local authorities here, requesting a wellness check. She also wanted documentation that you were mentally incompetent and needed family intervention. The room felt like it was spinning. She wanted you to lie. When I refused, she got aggressive, started talking about how you'd always been unstable and had a history of making dangerous decisions. She had stories prepared, Melissa, detailed stories about eating disorders, self-harm, abusive relationships, none of which sounded authentic to a trained professional. Dr. Kim pulled out another document. Then I got this. It was a medical record. My medical record from when I was 19 and had food poisoning after a bad restaurant meal. But someone had altered it, where the original diagnosis read acute gastroenteritis. This version read eating disorder, anorexia nervosa. How did you get this? Your mother brought it to me claiming it proved you had a history of mental health issues that made you susceptible to manipulation. I stared at the forged document, my hands shaking. They falsified my medical records. It gets worse. I did some research on the private investigator they hired, James Morrison. He's been arrested twice for stalking and has had his PI license suspended in 3 states. Your parents specifically sought out someone willing to work in legal gray areas. Dr. Kim leaned forward. Melissa, your family isn't just trying to manipulate you into coming home. They're building a legal case to have you declared mentally incompetent. They want guardianship. The room went silent except for the sound of my heart pounding. Guardianship, I'm 29 years old with a successful career. Which is why they need to prove you're mentally unfit. The forged medical records, Sophia's false testimony, hiring a disreputable investigator to document your erratic behavior. It's all part of a strategy. But why would they go this far? Dr. Kim hesitated. This is where I'm really breaking confidentiality, but I think you need to know. During our sessions, Sophia let slip some things about your family's financial situation. It sounds like your father's real estate business is failing. They've been using your mother's inheritance to stay afloat, but that money is almost gone. What does that have to do with me? Your grandmother's trust fund, the one that's supposed to transfer to you on your 30th birthday next year. Sophia mentioned it specifically. She seemed to think that if they could get guardianship over you, they could access those funds. My grandmother's trust. I'd almost forgotten about it. Grandma had set it up before she died, specifying that I'd inherit $200,000 on my 30th birthday. It wasn't life-changing money, but it was significant. They're trying to steal my inheritance. It appears so. And Melissa, there's something else. Sophia wasn't just asking about mental competency evaluations. She was asking about accidents. Accidents. She wanted to know what would happen to a trust fund if the beneficiary died before receiving it. Who it would go to. The blood drained from my face. Are you saying they're planning to hurt me? I'm saying their behavior has escalated beyond normal family manipulation. You should take precautions. I left Dr. Kim's office in a daze. My family wasn't just trying to control me, they were trying to destroy me. Financially, legally, and possibly physically. That evening, I called Jennifer Walsh and scheduled an emergency meeting. By midnight, we had filed for a restraining order and documented everything Dr. Kim had shared. This changes everything, Jennifer said. We're not just dealing with family drama anymore. This is potentially criminal conspiracy. I barely slept that night. Every sound in my apartment building made me jump. Every car that slowed down outside my window made me peer through the blinds. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We know where you work. We know where you live. Come home or things will get unpleasant. You can't hide forever. I screenshotted the message immediately and forwarded it to Jennifer. Then I did something that surprised even me. I forwarded it to Johnny, my boss, with a simple message. Family situation escalating. May need security assistance. His response came within minutes. Coming to pick you up. Pack a bag. You're staying at my place tonight. We'll figure this out tomorrow. As I waited for Johnny, I realized something profound had happened. For the first time in my adult life, I had people who were willing to protect me instead of exploit me. My chosen family was stronger than my blood family, and I was about to prove just how dangerous it could be to threaten someone who'd finally learned to fight back. Johnny Rodriguez lived in a beautiful craftsman house in the Wallingford neighborhood, complete with a security system and cameras, precautions he'd installed after a previous employee had been stalked by an ex-husband. Corporate espionage isn't the only thing we deal with in this business, he explained as he showed me to the guest room. I've learned that protecting my team sometimes means protecting them from their personal lives too. I was grateful beyond words. Over coffee the next morning, Johnny laid out a plan that was both professional and personal. First, we're increasing security at the office. I'm hiring a private security firm to monitor your floor. Second, I'm promoting you. What? Senior creative director with a 40% salary increase. Your Sophia problem just became a Sterling & Associates problem, and we protect our senior staff. I started to protest, but Johnny held up his hand. Melissa, your work these past 6 weeks has been exceptional. This promotion isn't charity, it's recognition. The fact that it also makes you less financially vulnerable to your family's manipulation is just a bonus. That afternoon, I got a call that changed everything. Ms. Rodriguez, this is Detective Amanda Foster with Seattle PD. We need to talk. My stomach dropped. Is everything okay? We arrested a man outside your apartment building this morning, James Morrison, the private investigator your family hired. He was attempting to break into your apartment. I sank into my office chair. What? He had lock-picking tools, a camera, and what appears to be a listening device. He also had detailed floor plans of your building and information about your daily routine. Oh my God, there's more. We found evidence on his laptop suggesting he's been surveilling you for weeks. Photos taken through your window, records of your comings and goings, even recordings of your phone conversations. My hands were shaking now. How is that legal? It's not. He's being charged with stalking, attempted burglary, and invasion of privacy. But Ms. Rodriguez, we need to talk about who hired him. Detective Foster's office was downtown in a building that smelled like coffee and stress. She was a woman in her 40s with graying hair and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd seen too much. Morrison isn't talking, but his financial records show payments from your father, David Martinez. 3 payments of $2,000 each over the past month. My father paid him $6,000 to stalk me. It appears so. We also found communications between Morrison and someone using your sister's phone number, giving him detailed instructions about what to look for in your apartment. Detective Foster spread out printed screenshots of text messages. Sophia's number clear as day, instructing Morrison to find evidence of drug use or mental instability, and to check for signs of an abusive relationship. They were trying to frame me, looks that way. Morrison was also instructed to plant certain items if he couldn't find anything incriminating naturally. She showed me photos of the items found in Morrison's car, a bag of white powder that looked like cocaine, several bottles of prescription medications with forged labels and printed emails purporting to be from abusive ex-boyfriends. Holy shit, I whispered. We need you to press charges, not just against Morrison, but against your family members who hired him. I stared at the evidence spread across Detective Foster's desk. My own family had tried to destroy my life, steal my inheritance, and potentially have me committed or arrested on false charges. What happens if I press charges? Your father and sister would likely face charges for conspiracy fraud and criminal harassment. Given the interstate nature of the crimes and the financial motivation, federal charges are also possible. I thought about Sophia despite everything. She was selfish and manipulative, but was she really criminal? Then I remembered Dr. Kim's words about Sophia asking about what happens to trust funds when beneficiaries die. I'll press charges, I said. All of them. That evening I called Maya to fill her in. Jesus Christ, Melissa, they really went full psycho. It gets worse. Detective Foster said they found evidence that Morrison was instructed to escalate if the planted evidence didn't work. Escalate how? Create situations where I appeared to be a danger to myself or others. Fake emergencies that would justify involuntary psychiatric holds. Maya was quiet for a long moment. They were trying to have you committed, all to get control of Grandma's trust fund. And Maya, there's something else. The detective found Morrison's communications with someone at a psychiatric facility in Portland. They were discussing private room rates and how to expedite commitment procedures. They had it all planned out, down to the last detail. If I hadn't left when I did, if I'd gone home to help with Sophia's fake crisis, I shuddered to think what might have happened. What now? Now I wait for the arrests, and I prepare for war. The next morning brought news that felt like justice served ice cold. Detective Foster called at 8 a.m. Your father and sister were arrested an hour ago in Portland. They're being extradited to Seattle to face charges here. What about my mother? She's cooperating with investigators, claims she was unaware of the extent of her husband and daughter's activities. Her story is checking out so far. It appears she genuinely thought they were just trying to help you. And Sophia, your sister is not taking this well. She's demanding to speak with you, claiming this is all a misunderstanding. I'm not interested in speaking with her. Good, don't. Anything you say could complicate the prosecution. That afternoon my phone rang with a call from Portland Jail. I declined it. It rang again, declined. Then the voicemail started. Mel, this is insane. I never meant for it to go this far. Morrison was Dad's idea. You're destroying our family over money. Is that what you've become? I'm your sister. How can you do this to me? Each message was more desperate than the last. But I remembered Dr. Kim's warning about Sophia asking about accidents and trust fund beneficiaries dying. I forwarded all the voicemails to Detective Foster and blocked the jail's number. Some bridges deserve to be burned. 6 months later, I sat in a Seattle courtroom watching my father and sister learn the consequences of their choices. The trial had been a media sensation. Family conspiracy to steal inheritance goes wrong, was how the Seattle Times had headlined it. The evidence was overwhelming. Morrison had flipped and testified in exchange for a reduced sentence detailing exactly how my family had hired him to destroy my life. Bank records showed the payments. Phone records proved the coordination. The planted evidence spoke for itself. My father sat at the defendant's table looking older than his 58 years. He'd aged dramatically in the 6 months since his arrest, his hair now completely gray, his expensive suit unable to hide his defeated posture. Sophia, however, looked defiant. She kept glancing back at me in the gallery, her expression cycling between pleading and angry. She'd lost weight and her usually perfect appearance was disheveled. The influencer lifestyle doesn't translate well to jail jumpsuits. The defendants engaged in a calculated, sustained campaign of harassment, fraud, and conspiracy, the prosecutor, ADA Rachel Martinez, told the jury. They forged medical documents, hired a criminal investigator to stalk and potentially assault the victim, and planned to have her falsely committed to steal her inheritance. ADA Martinez was thorough and brutal. She laid out the timeline, the financial motivation, and the escalating criminal behavior. She played recordings of Sophia's conversations with Morrison, including the chilling discussion about accidents. When it was time for victim impact statements, I stood at the podium and looked directly at my father and sister. For 29 years, you convinced me that family loyalty meant sacrificing my dreams for your comfort. You taught me that my needs were less important than Sophia's wants. You made me believe that setting boundaries was selfish. My voice was steady, clear. Months of therapy had prepared me for this moment. But what you did after I left showed me who you really are. You didn't miss me, you missed controlling me. You didn't love me, you loved what I could do for you. And when I finally chose myself, you tried to destroy me rather than let me go. Sophia was crying now, but I continued. You were willing to have me committed to a psychiatric facility based on lies. You were willing to plant drugs in my apartment. You discussed my death as a financial opportunity. That's not family, that's predation. I looked directly at my father. Dad, you stood by while this happened. You funded it. You enabled it. Your silence wasn't passive, it was complicit. Then I turned to Sophia. And you were willing to see me destroyed, rather than grow up and take care of yourself. That's not sisterly love, that's parasitism. But I want you to know something. Your plan failed, but it also freed me. For the first time in my life, I'm surrounded by people who support my success instead of sabotaging it. I have a career I love, friends who protect me, and a future that belongs to me. I paused, letting that sink in. You tried to steal my inheritance, but you gave me something more valuable. You gave me the gift of seeing exactly who you are, and the strength to walk away. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. My father was convicted on all counts: conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit burglary, and criminal harassment. He was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. Sophia was convicted on the same charges, plus additional counts, related to her direct communications with Morrison about escalating the harassment. She received 4 years. Morrison, who had cooperated, got 2 years. As the sentences were read, I felt something I hadn't expected: relief, not satisfaction. This wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. It was about consequences, finally catching up with actions. After the trial, Johnny took me to dinner at the city's most expensive restaurant. How do you feel? He asked over champagne. Free, I said simply. For the first time in my adult life, completely free. And your mother, Mom, had been the surprise of this whole ordeal. After her initial shock, she'd begun her own journey of self-discovery. She'd divorced my father while he awaited trial, moved out of the family home, and started therapy. She's changing, really changing. She sent me a letter last week apologizing for 30 years of enabling Dad and Sophia. She's not asking for forgiveness or relationship. She's just acknowledging the damage. Think you'll reconcile? I considered this. Maybe someday, but it would have to be as equals, not as parent and child. Those old dynamics are dead. Johnny raised his glass. To Melissa Rodriguez, Senior Creative Director and the strongest person I know. To chosen family, I replied, clinking his glass. 6 months after the trial, I was putting the finishing touches on the biggest campaign of my career, when Maya called with news that would test everything I'd learned about boundaries and forgiveness. Your sister's getting out early, she said without preamble. Good behavior, she's being released next week. I set down my coffee and stared out at the Seattle skyline from my corner office. Yes, corner office. Sterling & Associates had expanded, and I now ran the entire West Coast creative division. How do you know this? Your mom called me. She wanted to give you a heads up. Mom and I had been cautiously rebuilding our relationship through letters and emails. She'd moved to a small town in Oregon, opened a pottery studio, and was living quietly. She'd proven her commitment to change by refusing to bail out Dad or Sophia, even when they'd begged. Did she say what Sophia's planning? That's the thing. Your mom thinks Sophia might try to contact you. She's been talking about making amends and rebuilding the family. I laughed. But it wasn't entirely bitter anymore. Prison had a way of giving people perspective, sometimes. Let her try. I'm not the same person she manipulated for 29 years. What if she shows up at your office, your apartment? Then she'll learn about restraining orders and trespassing charges. I'm not afraid of Sophia anymore, Maya. The woman who left that letter and disappeared. She was running from something. The woman sitting here now isn't running from anything, but I was curious. What had prison done to my sister? Had she learned anything, or was this just another manipulation? I got my answer the following Tuesday. Melissa. My assistant knocked on my office door. There's a woman here to see you, says she's your sister. Should I call security? No, I said, surprising myself. Send her in, but stay close. Sophia walked into my office looking like a completely different person. Gone was the Instagram perfect appearance, the designer clothes, the entitled posture. She wore simple jeans and a plain sweater. Her hair was shorter, natural colored. She looked smaller somehow, more human. Hi, she said quietly, standing awkwardly by the door. Sophia, I didn't get up from my desk, didn't invite her to sit. I heard you were being released. Yeah, last week. She looked around my office, taking in the awards on the walls, the view, the obvious signs of my success. This is impressive. What do you want? She flinched at my directness. The old Sophia would have launched into tears or drama by now. This version just nodded. I deserved that. Melissa. I know you probably don't want to hear this, but I need to say it. I'm sorry. For which part? The stalking, the attempted frame-up, the discussion about my accidental death. Her face crumpled. All of it. Everything. I didn't realize how sick I was until I lost everything. Prison therapy, watching Dad destroy himself with guilt. It made me see what we did to you. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation. But she seemed genuinely broken in a way that felt real. Sophia, I'm glad you're getting help, but I'm not interested in rebuilding a relationship. I'm not asking for that, she said quickly. I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted to tell you that I understand now why you left, and I'm grateful. Grateful. Prison saved my life. Losing everything forced me to figure out who I am without other people propping me up. I got my GED. I'm taking college courses online. I have a job at a nonprofit helping other women transition out of incarceration. She paused, seeming to gather courage. I also wanted you to know that I testified against Dad during his parole hearing. Told them everything about how he manipulated both of us for years. He won't be getting out early. That surprised me. The old Sophia would never have turned against Dad. Why? Because he was the architect of all this, and I was too weak to see it. He spent years teaching me that you existed to solve my problems. He convinced me that your success was somehow taking something away from me. He made us competitors instead of sisters. Tears were flowing now, but she didn't try to wipe them away. I know this doesn't fix anything. I know I can't undo what I did. But I wanted you to know that the person who tried to destroy you is gone. I had to lose everything to find out who I actually am. I sat in silence for a long moment, processing this. The Sophia in front of me seemed genuine, but I'd been fooled before. I appreciate you telling me this, I said finally. But I'm not ready to forgive. I may never be ready. I understand. I just hope someday you can be proud of who I become instead of ashamed of who I was. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. Melissa, you were right to leave. You were right to disappear. You were right to press charges. I hope you know that. After she left, I sat in my office for a long time thinking about transformation and redemption. about whether people can really change or if they just get better at hiding who they are. My phone buzzed with a text from Johnny. "Dinner tonight, I have news." That evening, over wine and pasta at our favorite restaurant, Johnny shared his news. "I'm retiring next year. Early retirement. I want to travel, maybe write that novel I've been talking about for years." "That's wonderful," I said, though. I felt a pang of loss. Johnny had been more than a boss. He'd been a mentor and protector. "There's more. The board wants you to take over as CEO. I nearly choked on my wine. "CEO, Johnny, I'm 30. I've only been with the company for 18 months. You've tripled our West Coast revenue and landed clients we never dreamed of working with. More importantly, you've shown leadership under pressure. The way you handled your family situation turned it into an opportunity to grow stronger. That's CEO material." I stared at him speechless. "Think about it," he continued. "You could reshape the entire company culture. Make it a place where talent thrives, regardless of background or family drama. You could be the leader you needed when you were younger." That night, I called Maya to share the news. "CEO, holy shit, Melissa. Do you realize what this means? That I'm terrified. That you've officially won. You didn't just escape your family's toxicity. You thrived because of it. You're about to become one of the most powerful women in Seattle's marketing industry." After we hung up, I walked out onto my apartment balcony and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Sophia was probably in a halfway house trying to build a life from scratch. Somewhere else, my father was in a federal prison finally facing consequences for his actions. And here I was about to become the CEO of a major company at 30 years old. The letter I'd left on my parents' kitchen counter that night had said I was choosing myself for the first time. I hadn't realized I was also choosing to become the most successful version of myself. Sometimes running away isn't about escape. Sometimes it's about running toward the person you're meant to become. 2 years later, I stood at the podium in the grand ballroom of the Fairmont Olympic Hotel, addressing an audience of 500 women at the annual Women in Leadership Conference I'd helped organize. As the CEO of Sterling & Associates, I'd grown the company by 400% and been named one of Seattle's 40 under 40 business leaders. "Ladies, I want to tell you about the night I disappeared." I began, my voice carrying clearly through the room. 2.5 years ago, I was 29 years old and had spent my entire adult life being told that my dreams mattered less than other people's comfort. The audience was rapt. This wasn't my usual business presentation. This was personal. My family had trained me to believe that setting boundaries was selfish, that success was shameful if it made others uncomfortable, and that my primary purpose was to solve everyone else's problems. I clicked to the next slide, which showed a photo of my current office overlooking Elliott Bay. The night I got the job offer of my dreams, my mother called at 3 a.m., demanding I turn it down to help my sister with her latest crisis. When I refused, she gave me an ultimatum: sacrifice my future or lose my family. A murmur went through the audience. Several women nodded in recognition. I chose myself. I wrote a letter, booked a plane ticket, and disappeared. What happened next taught me the most important lesson of my life. Sometimes the people who claim to love you are actually your biggest obstacles to success. I clicked to the next slide, showing a newspaper headline from my family's trial. My family hired a criminal investigator to stalk me, forged my medical records to have me declared mentally incompetent, and discussed my death as a financial opportunity. They preferred to destroy me rather than let me succeed. The audience gasped. This was the first time I'd spoken publicly about the trial. But here's what they didn't understand: by trying to break me, they freed me. For the first time in my life, I saw their manipulation clearly. I stopped making excuses for their behavior. I stopped setting myself on fire to keep them warm. I clicked to a slide showing Sterling & Associates' growth chart. Today I run a company that employs 200 people. We've created a workplace culture where talent is valued over family connections, where boundaries are respected, and where success is celebrated rather than sabotaged. The applause was thunderous. Ladies, I'm here to tell you that you don't owe anyone your dreams. You don't owe anyone your success. You don't owe anyone your happiness. And if people in your life are trying to convince you otherwise, that says everything about them and nothing about you. After my speech, I was surrounded by women sharing their own stories of family manipulation, toxic relationships, and the courage it takes to choose yourself. It was powerful and heartbreaking and inspiring all at once. As the crowd began to thin, I noticed a familiar figure standing near the back of the room. My mother, looking older but healthier than I'd seen her in years. She waited until everyone else had left before approaching. "Melissa," she said softly. That was powerful. "Mom." I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or agenda, but she seemed genuinely proud. "What are you doing here? I drove up from Oregon. I've been following your career, your success. I wanted to hear you speak." And she smiled, and for the first time in my memory, it seemed genuine. "I wanted to apologize. Not for what your father and Sophia did. I've already done that. But for 30 years of teaching you that your needs didn't matter." I felt something loosen in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement. "I've been in therapy for 3 years now," she continued, "learning about codependency, emotional manipulation, family systems. I understand now what we did to you. How we used your strength against you." "Mom." "I'm not asking for a relationship," she said quickly. "I know I don't deserve that. I just wanted you to know that I see you now. Really see you, and I'm proud of who you've become despite us, not because of us." We stood in silence for a moment. Two women who'd been shaped by the same toxic family system, but had chosen different paths out. "How's your pottery studio?" I asked finally. Her face lit up. "Good, really good. I'm finally creating something instead of trying to control something. It's peaceful. I'm glad." "Melissa, can I ask you something?" I nodded. "Do you ever regret it? Leaving the way you did? Pressing charges?" I thought about the question seriously. Did I regret the pain it had caused? The years of silence? The family holidays that would never happen? "No," I said finally. "I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret doing it." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Good, you shouldn't." As she turned to leave, she paused. "Your speech today about choosing yourself. That's the most important thing anyone can learn. I just wish I'd learned it 50 years sooner." After she left, I sat alone in the empty ballroom, thinking about transformation and redemption, about the difference between regret and grief. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "Saw the live stream of your speech. Crying in my office. So proud of you." Then another from Johnny. "Brilliant speech. You've officially arrived." And surprisingly, one from an unknown number. "Melissa, this is Sophia. I watched your speech online. Thank you for showing me what strength looks like. I'm proud to be your sister, even if I don't deserve to be." I stared at that last message for a long time before deleting it. Not out of cruelty, but because I'd learned the difference between forgiveness and restoration. I could wish Sophia well without needing her in my life. That night, I hosted a dinner party at my house, a gorgeous Craftsman in Queen Anne that I'd bought with my CEO salary. My guests were my chosen family: Maya, Johnny, Dr. Kim, who'd become a friend, Jennifer Walsh, my attorney turned mentor, and several colleagues who'd become genuine friends. "A toast," Johnny said, raising his glass as we finished dessert. "To Melissa, who taught us all that the best revenge is massive success." "Actually," I said, standing up, "I want to amend that." Everyone looked at me expectantly. The best revenge isn't massive success. The best revenge is becoming so authentically yourself that other people's opinions become irrelevant. Success is just a byproduct of self-respect. I looked around at the faces of people who'd chosen to support my growth instead of sabotage it. 3 years ago, I thought I was running away from my family, but I was actually running toward all of you, toward a life where my needs matter, where my boundaries are respected, and where my success is celebrated. I raised my glass to chosen family, to authentic success, and to the courage to disappear from the lives that don't serve us, so we can appear in the lives that do. The applause was warm and genuine. Later, as my friends were leaving, Maya pulled me aside. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd stayed, if you'd given up the Seattle job and gone home to fix Sophia's problems?" I thought about it seriously. I know exactly what would have happened. I'd still be there, still solving everyone else's problems, still making excuses for their behavior. I'd be smaller, dimmer, less than I was meant to be. And now I looked around at my beautiful home filled with people who genuinely cared about me, at the life I'd built from scratch after burning down the old one. Now I'm exactly who I was meant to be, and that's worth everything it cost to get here. As I closed the door after the last guest left, I felt something I'd never experienced before, complete peace with my choices. No guilt about the family I'd left behind. No regret about the pain I'd caused. No doubt about the life I'd chosen. For the first time in my 32 years, I was exactly where I belonged. Epilogue. The lesson learned. 5 years after I disappeared from my family's kitchen counter, I received an invitation that would test everything I'd learned about forgiveness, boundaries, and growth. It was handwritten on simple white paper. Melissa, I'm getting married next month. I know I have no right to ask, but I'd like you to be there. Not as my sister, I know I lost that right years ago, but as a witness to who I've become. The woman getting married isn't the one who tried to destroy you. She's someone you helped create by refusing to enable her. Love, Sophia. I stared at the invitation for a long time. Sophia had been out of prison for 3 years, and from what Mom had told me, she'd truly turned her life around. She worked at a women's shelter, had earned her bachelor's degree, and was engaged to a man she'd met in group therapy, someone who understood brokenness and healing. Maya, now my COO at Sterling & Associates, found me sitting with the invitation an hour later. "Whatcha thinking about?" she asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. I handed her the invitation. She read it, whistled low. Damn, that's actually really mature of her. Right, the old Sophia would have demanded forgiveness, would have made it about her pain and my cruelty. This Sophia is just asking. Are you going to go? I thought about it. I think I am. Not because I forgive her, that's still complicated, but because I'm curious about who she's become, and because I'm strong enough now to handle whatever happens. What if it's manipulative? What if she's still playing games? I smiled. Then I leave? I'm not the same woman who used to sacrifice herself to avoid conflict. If Sophia tries to manipulate me, she'll learn that I have boundaries now. Strong ones. The wedding was in a small community center in Portland. Simple, humble, nothing like the elaborate affair Sophia had always dreamed of. As I walked in, I barely recognized my sister. She wore a simple white dress from a department store. Her hair naturally styled, her makeup minimal. She looked peaceful, happy in a way I'd never seen before. When she saw me, her face lit up with genuine joy. Not the performative happiness of her influencer days, but real emotion. "Melissa," she said, approaching carefully. "You came. I said I would. I know, but I thought you might change your mind. I wouldn't have blamed you." She introduced me to her fiancé David, a quiet man who worked as a counselor for at-risk youth. He knew our entire history. Sophia had told him everything. "I want you to know," he said quietly, "what your sister did to you was inexcusable. But the woman I'm marrying today, she's not that person anymore. She does the work every day to be better." The ceremony was simple, but moving. Sophia's vows were honest about her past mistakes and her commitment to being worthy of love. When she looked at me during the reception, there were tears in her eyes. "Thank you for coming," she said. "And thank you for not coming home that night 3 years ago. If you had, neither of us would be who we are today." "Who are you today?" I asked. "Someone who takes responsibility for her own life. Someone who doesn't expect other people to solve her problems. Someone who's grateful for the sister who loved her enough to let her fall." I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but recognition, growth, possibility. "I'm proud of who you've become," I said honestly. "I'm proud of who you always were. I just wasn't mature enough to see it." We didn't become best friends that day. We didn't suddenly have a normal sister relationship. But we acknowledged each other as two women who'd survived the same toxic family system and found different paths to healing. As I drove back to Seattle that evening, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. From the desperate woman who'd written a letter at 3 a.m. to the CEO who'd built a life on her own terms. The lesson wasn't about revenge, really. It was about self-respect. About understanding that you can't control other people's choices, but you can control your response to them. My family had tried to destroy me when I chose myself, but their betrayal had freed me in ways I never could have imagined. It had forced me to build a life based on my own values instead of their expectations. For every woman reading this who's struggling with family manipulation, toxic relationships, or the fear of choosing herself, remember this. You don't owe anyone your dreams. You don't owe anyone your success. You don't owe anyone your happiness. The people who truly love you will celebrate your growth, not sabotage it. They'll respect your boundaries, not punish you for having them. They'll support your success, not diminish it to make themselves feel better. And if the people in your life can't do that, if they respond to your growth with manipulation, guilt, or threats, that tells you everything you need to know about them and nothing about you. Sometimes disappearing from the lives that don't serve you is the only way to appear in the life you're meant to live. Sometimes the greatest act of love for yourself and for others is walking away. Sometimes the family that matters most is the one you choose, not the one you're born into. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's becoming so authentically, unapologetically yourself that other people's opinions become irrelevant. It's building a life so fulfilling that you don't need anyone else's approval to feel whole. It's discovering that the person you were afraid to become is exactly who you were meant to be all along. 3 years after writing that letter and disappearing into my own life, I can say with complete certainty choosing yourself is never the wrong choice. Even when it costs you everything you thought you wanted, it gives you everything you actually need. The courage to leave, the strength to rebuild, the wisdom to choose better, and the peace that comes from finally being home in your own life. That's the real revenge. That's the real victory. That's the real happy ending. Not the one where everyone comes crawling back, apologizing and begging for forgiveness, but the one where you become so secure in who you are that it doesn't matter whether they do or not, because you've already won. You chose yourself, and that choice changed everything. The end.